um, I would have had an experience of being a minority in a positive sense. I would have thought, well, I'm just the one weird creature shipwrecked in this species. Um, I don't know why. I was drawn to Judaism as a religious practice. I wasn't raised in a religious household, but I think that part of that, and this is something that is common among transgender kids, transgender children are often intensely religious. I mean, children are often intensely religious. Transgender children are in a situation where the only person who knows who they really are is God. And God is the only person who can get them out of the trap that they're in. And there hasn't been, as far as I've seen, a lot of writing about this, but whenever trans people talk about their childhoods, they report these agonizing and agonizingly similar conversations with God, where you try to find out what can you give God, what can you give up, what can you offer, so that God will allow you to become yourself. Um, so it can be a really love-hate relationship, right? God, you did this to me, but also you're the only friend I've got. You're the only one who knows that this is who I really am. And ultimately, God's presence, if you can hang on to that, and that becomes hard for some people for a lot of reasons, partly because religious institutions often get in the way, and religious institutions have traditionally been pretty hostile to queer people of all types. So if you start to identify God as being on the side of those institutions that are exclusive, you can lose that connection. But if you don't lose the connection with God, then God can become the first model of acceptance you have, because whatever you say, whatever you feel, whatever you are, God remains present. So I think that my religious life has been profoundly enhanced, I would say, by being trans. Um, in terms of Judaism, Judaism is just a bizarre religion. Um, I think that it was pretty weird even in the Bronze Age, but it is definitely strange now. And the strangest thing in Judaism is God. It's God as portrayed in the Torah. So when I read the Torah, I said, wow, another creature that doesn't make any sense in terms of human society, but who desperately wants to fit in. And, God, of course, keeps making a mess of every attempt to, the floods and plagues, and, every attempt to really hang out with the Jewish people seems to go awry. But God doesn't give up. God is not human, is not the same, is not comprehensible by those people, but somehow really wants to be in relationship. So to me, there was something in Judaism, despite the institutional hostility toward queer people, that really, really resonated for me at a deep level in terms of my trans identity.
How about Orthodox Judaism? Do you have any thoughts about how Orthodox Judaism has wrestled with transgender Jews? Are they wrestling?
Well, there has been wrestling. There's been at least one official rabbinic decision that holds that it's not the transition, what trans Jews have to do to their bodies in order to um, make them conform to their sense of gender identity is not halachically acceptable. But there was a minority opinion, and I think that there is also, I'm on a list of trans Jews who live in hiding in the Orthodox world, and they report many individual rabbis that they speak with frankly about their gender identities, and they go to with halachic questions. Which blessings do I say? Which halacha do I follow? If you're an Orthodox trans Jew, this is very important to you. And there are rabbis who enter into these dialogues constructively and supportively, and they maintain the confidence and safety of those Jews. They make it possible for them to be in their communities and to live what they feel are good Jewish lives. So I think that when the New York Post broke the story, there was a wide range of response to my presence in the Orthodox world, and some of that response was maybe predictably negative. I was an abomination, I was a threat to the Jewish people, I represented this secular society's values that would destroy Torah values. Um, I was mentally ill. I shouldn't be teaching young women because what I am is a sick kind of a thing. This is a sexual fetish that I'm requiring other people to engage with in public. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about it and attempts to understand it, and a lot of people saying, no, this is just absolutely unacceptable. But there were many, many, many Orthodox Jews who both privately to me and publicly distanced themselves from those reactions. One of my students came into my office after I came out, and she said, my father is a rabbi, and I thought, oh no, I really like you. I don't want to hear that your father, the rabbi, said something horrible about me. What she said was, my father preached a sermon about you. It was the run-up to the high holidays, and he said that that your story showed that we never know what suffering the person next to us is going through, and that we need to really be more responsive and more open to those around us. There were people who said, I don't understand what this is, but I understand that you're a human being in pain. And Judaism, as I understand it, calls upon me to be compassionate and supportive. There were many Orthodox Jews who said, look, lots of Jews violate commandments. We're not put here on this earth to judge other people. That's God's business. We're here to understand and to accept. One of the things that I was proudest of was I had nothing to do with this. The editor of the Stern college student newspaper, The Observer, responded to my return. I hadn't known her by devoting an entire issue to transsexuality in Judaism. And yes, and she got permission from these trans Jews living in hiding. They spoke to her anonymously, and she printed their voices and the voices of rabbis, and there was an article about me. And as far as I know, it's a unique document. I think it's some of the best journalism that's been done about this. There was one of my students who said, wow, as a woman who sometimes feels put down by orthodoxy, I'm just amazed and delighted that a man would want to be a woman. So there was that kind of response also. But overall, I think that lots of people, including me and my dean and the administration of the school that was worried about donations being affected and demonstrations, I think we were all pretty surprised at the range of opinion and toleration that is already present in the Orthodox world. Everybody, I think, assumed that they were the only one, and that everybody else would be, there was one person who called for me to be burned alive. That person was immediately shouted down. This was on a website commentary, and the next comment was, people like you should be in jail. So these are all Orthodox Jews speaking to each other. I think that there was the assumption that everybody would be somewhere toward the burn alive end of the spectrum, and that is just not true. And that's not even a majority necessarily. And that because Orthodox Judaism holds medical perspectives in high esteem, that presents a real avenue of transformation for trans people. Now, many trans people don't want to be understood as having an illness, but I think for Orthodox Jews looking for a basis within halakha to be compassionate, that is a place. What hasn't been able to happen yet are conversations that I would love to have with Orthodox Jews about, the image of God and the way that's gotten tangled up with maleness and femaleness, and, what does it mean to accept someone like me, and is that, am I only something to be tolerated, or can I be seen as, can we be seen as positive, contributing members of the community, even by people who maybe feel uncomfortable in different ways? And discomfort with trans people is by no means limited to the Orthodox world. There are people uncomfortable all across the Jewish spectrum and all across the political spectrum. But for me, overall, the entire experience has made me realize that the human race as a species is much better than I gave it credit for, because despite really millennia of prejudice, I have been accepted.